Here we are on Thursday, September the 11th, in the present moment of yet another, more than one shooting from yesterday. So that's all very much on my mind. And I am almost finished reading Terry Tempest Williams' book, Finding Beauty in a Broken World. And she's writing a lot about Rwanda and the weaponizing of us versus them, which we seem to think is new right now, but it's not. In Rwanda, they didn't have guns. They used machetes, hoes, clubs, and fire to kill the others. So I had two thoughts. One was to play Eleanor Rigby about all the lonely people. Where do they all come from? But then I decided on a poem by Mark Nepo that I read last night. It's called Accepting This. Stripped of causes and plans and things to strive for, I have discovered everything I could need or ask for is right here in flawed abundance. We cannot eliminate hunger, but we can feed each other. We cannot eliminate loneliness, but we can hold each other. We cannot eliminate pain, but we can live a life of compassion. Ultimately, we are all small living things awakened in the stream, not gods who carve out rivers. Like human fish, we are asked to experience meaning in the life that moves through the gill of our heart. There is nothing to do and nowhere to go. Accepting this, we can do everything and go anywhere.
Beautiful. Is there an invitation that you are suggesting here, Janet?
I am inviting a pause in the worry, in the reaction, in the human instinct to do something.
I'm grappling with this invitation to a pause with such a vivid beginning to this Shades of Life conversation, which kind of has me reeling a little bit, and in some unexpected ways. So like, I'm not really sure where to go with this. So I'll just see what others have to say. But
I think reeling is what we are all, or many of us are doing in the world right now. Getting gobsmacked over and over and over. And how does one process that in our bodies, in our hearts, in our minds?
So I'm going to be the grumpy old man for a moment. And I have three thoughts going on. One is I'm tired of pause. I want to do something. This is what we always do, those of us with warm hearts and good spirits and compassion, is we pause, but the other side doesn't pause.
Mm.
And so I'm kind of tired of it. Just, and when I think about the question that from last time about what time is it in the world, when I didn't watch news yesterday. I rarely watch news at all anymore. But reading the online comments and watching some videos that showed up, what we heard last night from the right was it's time for war. That phrase was repeated over and over. It's time for war, or some variation on it. And so I've been wondering, is it time for war? And if it is, what does that mean? What does that look like? Is it a war of words? Is it a war of suppression? It could be a war of compassion, but that seems a little out of place here. Or is it a physical war? Do I need to go get something to be ready to go to war? Which is just anathematic to my personal beliefs, but and so I was on a call earlier about bridge building at 9 this morning that we're trying to do here in Minnesota. And the last time I was with that group, we were talking about the Portman assassination. And now today we're still in this bleak spot, the group is a bit. But the other thing that kind of popped for me a bit, Janet, when you started and been a bit on my mind of late, is this process of othering.
Mhm.
That we turn people that we don't agree with into the other.
Right.
And when we other something, we dehumanize them.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's been going on for some time, for many years, but it seems to have accelerated lately that we,
Mhm.
and I find myself guilty of it. I do not find Mr. Kurt anyone to admire at all. And I do have an inclination to want to other that point of view, and not even make any effort to understand it, because it is so far from my personal philosophy and so many things. And so, yeah, Mark Nepo, whom I've been fortunate to take a poetry class from, writes beautifully in what you read. And that's all this internal conflict is my own othering, my own uncertainty about what is war and is at the time in the world for it or in the US, and my own desire to go freaking do something here. But I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
And so a lot of combination of calmness and turmoil. That sounds a little like weird. It's the yin and yang of where I am right now. And so I'll let it rest there.
Can jump in for a bit. I am a little distracted because there's a carpet cleaner person that's coming to the house, and I've received a text that he's near. So I will need to move in a bit. But before that happens, trying to stay with where we are, I'm a little stunned by this moment also, this moment of the four of us together and the broader layers of what's happening in the world. I don't feel like I can make sense of it. I feel like I can just find a place to start, or a couple of places to start. I live in Utah. I live 45 minutes from the Utah Valley University, where I used to live. I'm going to keep looking over my shoulder here for these folks. Where I used to live was a mile away from Utah Valley University. I have a son who isn't now, but has gone to the university. So it geographically hits home. I don't know that much about Charlie Kirk, and other than general labels and some of that maybe default othering that I find myself in also. And like I said, I don't feel like I'm making sense of things. I'm trying to find a place to start when stunned. Um, uh, in a little scan online for me to check out a few headlines, Stephen Colbert. Thumbs up, and I didn't watch it, but I just caught the headline: Political violence doesn't solve political difference. I appreciate that as a starting point. Um, I think I have some grumpy old man in me also. I rely on pause. I rely on stillness. I rely on kindness. I rely on taking a breath. And uh, and I also have some of that energy in me that says, no, I don't even know what it is actually, but my not pausing somehow aligns with my not pausing. I don't know if I can even say that honestly, but my not pausing, it somehow aligns with, let's be clear. And that's a call to me, inner clarity in the midst of all of these things. Um, Jumping around just a bit, Harry Tempest Williams, also a Utah, Beauty in a Broken World. I find that the kinds of friendships and such that I appreciate, friendships, colleagueships, communities that I appreciate, are ones that are able to say, damn straight, it is a broken world. There is a truth in that. And who are also able to say, damn straight, there's beauty in the world. And here's a few examples of it. Now, I don't intend naivety on any of that, but somehow being able to live in all of that matters. And then we make some choices, maybe with some fierceness about the kindness that we stand for, or the pause that we stand for, or the flawed abundance, Nepo, that we stand for. I feel just sort of like, you know, the violence. Our governor, Cox, one of the clips that he was shown on just describes political assassination. And that's going to be something that's true at some level. And there are other things going on, so this isn't the first. Fuck, I even hate myself for saying that. It sounds so cute to say this isn't the first, this isn't the last, because I think in part because of the geographical proximity, it lands a little extra in me.
Mhm.
Now I'm just going to make one more link, and then I see the people outside, so I'm going to have to just go off for a little bit. But one more link is, when we talked last time, it was about what time is it in the world? And very closely related to that is, it's a time for blank. And we touched some of those threads then. It means to me that it's still a relevant conversation, that it's a time for what? It's a time for what kind of practice?
I'm going to pick up a thread or two here. First of all, Tennyson, I hear you about proximity to big, violent things. In Nova Scotia in 2020, at the start of COVID, there was a mass casualty shooting here in our province that lit up the news everywhere. And it's sobering, I think, in a way that does land a little bit differently because it's so close by. And you can make these kinds of associations like you just did where you used to live and your son going to that university. I kind of want to pick up what time is it in the world? And it's a time for, and I want to go to the notion of polarities. And I also just want to note, like, And surprisingly to me, but probably not to a lot of other people, I've only recently realized just how much of an empath that I am and how hard it is to be around intense experiences and a lot of intense emotion. And so there are things that I don't do. Like I don't watch these videos that come out of violence of any sort. I don't dive into some of these stories because it's just too much for me. It's overwhelming and it's overpowering. And I know a lot of people who feel that way and experience that. And that's why I want to come back to it's this time of polarities in a way, because we do have all of this vitriol that is pouring out, which is poisons the energy fields of like a lot of people like me. And the only thing that keeps me grounded in all of this is the recognition that with that, there is the polar opposite of that, which is that there are communities that are focused on light. They're focused on the fact that we're on the verge of some new timeline that looks way different than what we've been experiencing. One of the ways that one of the people I follow describes it is like we're all at the airport and we're all going to the same destination, but some of us are getting on a direct flight and going there right now today, and other of us are on those puddle jumpers where you've got a lot of stops along the way before you finally get to that destination. And so I think that there are people like us that maybe have 2 or 3 stops along the way, and then there are other people who probably have, I don't know, 100 stops along the way to get there, but we're all going to get there. And so the more that we focus on, more that I focus on the people who are bringing that light into the world and who are sharing those messages, all of whom, the ones that I follow, all of whom acknowledge that there is this challenge in the world, there is this division in the world, and that some people are in dire circumstances and don't have the energy or the capacity to be focused on something that for some people might seem idyllic or rose-colored glasses or whatever. But if I don't believe that, if I don't believe that that's there, I just won't function in my life or in the world. And so do I know that all that stuff happened? Absolutely. Do I feel for it? Absolutely. But I do myself and the people around me a disservice if I go too far down those rabbit holes.
It's one of the things that just sort of popped for me, Kathy, when you spoke, that it wasn't there when Tennyson spoke about the geographic proximity, but when you spoke about Nova Scotia, it reminded me of the shooting we had here at Annunciation School, because my son and daughter-in-law teach at a Catholic school. And so a few days after that, I asked him about its impact at the school, and it was disruptive for a couple of days. They had to do whatever things they had to do with the kids and so on. I only note that because how much longer will it be before we all have a story of proximity? And that's terrifying to me that's potentially out there. But you are right. So Dustin, so my son Dustin will turn, he's 49. He'll turn 50 next year. He's like 6'3". He's just, and he teaches kindergarten, and he's taught kindergarten his whole life. And they've tried to get him to be principal or this or that or the other thing. And he's like, no, this is my life. This is my love. And his partner, Becky, teaches 3rd grade at the same school. But every year to visit with him about teaching kindergarten is like joyful stories. You know, these little kids, they're coming in, many of them for their first socialization experience. So, you know, this whole learning behaviors and learning and all those kinds of things. And he also runs the after school program, but that's a whole nother thing for kids that, can't go home right away. But I guess where I'm getting at is, there's a place to find joy in the beauty of these kids and what they bring into the classroom and and the stories he tells about them, and they, I don't want to be immodest, but you can tell that these kids just love him. He's just this tall, gentle giant I think he's still a kindergartner by nature in many ways. Kathy's been around him. She knows how silly he can be and how much kids are just drawn to him. And so there's a bit of that too. I was playing with something the other day about not losing my inner child. And maybe that's where at times like this, we have to figure out how to just sort of reach out and touch that a little bit, that inner child, to protect us from the inclination to cynicism that might be easily the trap to fall into. So that's me for the moment.
I feel that too, Jerry. There's like a kind of breath in each paragraph here, So I'm going to add a little bit more into it. I appreciate the naming of joy. The joy exists. Yes, there are many ways that we can look to that, the kindergarten teachers and some other things. I also appreciate the pointing to what seems to live underneath it. So Kathy, naming polarities. And that makes me follow that a little bit. If I'm a person who's looking for the roots of things, both in the broader view of things, but also in the deeply inner world here, I'm looking for what lives underneath and what lives nearby it that gives it strength. So the tendency toward polarities, including the othering, Jerry, that you described, that one, when it's amplified, just feels like a shit show. Okay. For me, it's like the added language for me is beware the seduction of the polarity. Beware the seduction of the either or, I think again, that lives really close by that is beware the fear that is baked into a polarity. Either you are or you aren't. You're enough or you're not. You're safe or you're not. Like, just beware of those kind of things. Kathy, I appreciate the naming of the airport metaphor here and number of flights. And I had this quick flashback to planes, trains, and automobiles and Steve Martin with his rant about what he'd been on during the day. They all exist at the same time. The piece that I just went and tended to, the carpet guys arriving, brothers, they've been to our home before. They're kind of friendly dudes and they come with their equipment and, are taking care of a couple of carpets for us. And in the quick way for me to say, hey, I'm on a call right now. I need to go back to it. I'm going to go downstairs. Is there anything you need? One of them says playfully, well, a Dr. Pepper and a sandwich would be great. I smiled at him and we had this moment of just playful, banter, playful exchange. That exists at the same time. Another thing that exists at the same time, and just going with the real-time stuff here, last night dream, I'm a person that pays attention to dreams as best as I can. I try to remember them when they happen, even the tiniest little snippets, which is what most of my dreams are. Last night's dream I did remember, and it has significance, I think, even in this conversation. I am at a restaurant with a good buddy. It appears that we were supposed to be meeting some other people for our meal. They didn't show up. Don't know what happened there. And just towards the end of the meal, the waiter comes to our booth. We're sitting in a booth, and he says, "Would you guys be okay if these 6 young men joined you?" And in the dream, it feels like, well, okay, that's a little bit weird, but okay, why not? And we both, me and my buddies, say, why not? And these six younger men meaning, maybe in their 20s, they slide into the booth and then I wake up. Now, in the dream processing that I do, it also is utterly relevant to say, the younger men are looking for place. The younger men are looking for place with the older men, not to overplay it nor diminish it. When a hunch or a hint like that comes through, that was one of our threads from the last conversation. It's a time for me, it's a time for hunts and hunts. I struggled with this last time too, for hunches and hints. And when those come through, like I believe the individual psyche and the collective psyche wants that level of communication. And it might be more than coincidence also when we juxtapose the harshnesses and violence of the world with simple little hints and hunches also. It's a time to be listening to those things. So somewhere in all of this, I feel like the kind of life, I have to come back to me, the kind of life that I want to live has a capacity to be with all of it. There is pain, there is suffering, there is injustice, there is violence. And then there's the carpet guy upstairs that says a Dr. Pepper and a sandwich would be awesome. Playfulness, all of those things. That's what stirs for me. I'll stop there.
Janet, I want to hear your voice. I just want to jump in quickly and go, having been at a funeral sometime in the last month or so, the husband of a dear friend of mine, that is the kind of place where everything exists all at the same time is so evident, because people are grieving, people are laughing, thinking about the person who's left and the totality of them. And so we can laugh while we cry, at the same time. We can feel the pain at the same time that we remember the joy and the fun. So I just wanted to put that in there. Janet, what's up for you?
Let's go.
I feel as if we are all living in everything, everywhere, all the time. And it's neck snapping as your head goes from this to that, to up, to down. And I so identify with the pain of being the empath, because it means it's easy for others to see us as overreacting and being too sensitive and imagining things that aren't real. And sometimes it's an overactive imagination, and sometimes it's hearing a hunch or a hint and the discernment to figure out what is it. So I think we all come back to our benchmark. There's something that where we can rest. And it's different for everybody. I don't watch the news for self-protection. I figure if it's big enough, I'll hear about it somewhere, somehow, either on Facebook or for one of the kids. Or I have a daughter who calls me when she says, there's a tornado warning. So just because I know you don't pay attention to these things. And I am very much focusing on what can I do in this time of chaos. And it's single interactions. It is one conversation at a time. And I didn't realize how important they were because they're little bitty, teeny tiny, simple things. But my very right wing, independent, conquer the wilderness son-in-law said to me one time, "You know, you are the only liberal I can talk to." And I thought that was the highest compliment anyone had ever given me, because it tells me that he knows I also listen to him, and he knows we don't share the same worldview. And that's all I know how to do right now, is to show up and shut up and listen and not diminish, but not try to fix. It's such a narrow thread to stand on. And I'll stop. Except to say there are no others. We are all one. And we forget it
Janet,
because we're being fed it.
yeah, good. I was going to say, what pops that extra aha in for you? That extra line that you just gave.
Because I am an old lefty. And I have watched for 8 to 10 years of my people becoming like the right. And it breaks my heart, but there's nothing I can do about it, because we can't fight with those tools. And I don't know yet that we know what the new tools are. But when we wind up reflecting the things we say are hateful about the other, when they become incorporated in how we talk, I think we're done.
So there's that sound again. Let me weave just a little bit too. I don't feel like I can put it into a coherent paragraph, but it feels like these are parts of it. For some people, the work is to like live in the mud and need it, like in that way. I can get my feet muddy and I can get my hands muddy and live with all of that. My hunch, my life energy grows more when I tend to focus on an invitation, a possibility. What could we learn here? What could we understand here? So I know I live in that direction. And part of living in that direction is learning that that is somehow aligned. That may not be for some others to do, but it is for me to do. I feel an awakening life energy in doing that. The risk, the shadow side of that is some sort of Pollyanna rose tinted glasses kind of thing. And I just accept that that's part of it that's there. I have to move in the direction of what feels good. And that's code in some way for what feels life affirming. And I'm trying to speak that from the deepest place that I know of being slightly empathic myself, intuitively oriented, and just knowing where I feel like I'm able to have some influence. Alongside all of that lives some phrase for me of shit is real. And there's the sound again. Maybe I'm learning, okay, so feeling it out loud, learning to just be more attuned to such reality. Shit is real. And when I'm talking with younger people, shit, it's not just younger people, but I think there's a unique thread of that conversation with younger people. When I'm talking to my son, when I'm talking to my kids, how is it that they approach what's going on in the world, which includes everything from being very aware and activism to, I can't look at that. I need to numb from that. I need to be oblivious from that. It's all there. I think there's something for me. So I come back to as a strategy and maybe a defense also. I come back to it's time to do what I can do. So what time is it in the world? It's time maybe for many of us to do what we can do. And for me, that means there's a certain inherent trust of the small things. I don't know how to be involved in the longer revolution. Shit. I feel shitty saying that. But I'm going to try to stay honest with it. The best way that I know to be part of that energy of revolution is pay attention to the things right in front of me. And that's what I end up doing. Tomorrow, I will host it, not tomorrow, the next day, Saturday. I'm hosting a group of men. What's a small thing that I can do? Men coming over, not online, to my living room, sitting at the dining room table, playing a flow game for 3 hours because I'm inviting them to say, we could be thoughtful together as one of the ways that we are together. Here's one way of being able to do that. Please come with a question that is meaningful and sincere to you that you would like to explore in the company of these other men, small group, there's probably 5 to 6 of us, or that you want to explore within yourself. That's my way of that's my more common way of being able to jump in and say, here's what let me pause there.
Jerry.
So when I first spoke at the start of our conversation, I talked about this invitation to go to war and questioning what that means. And I'm thinking that one answer to the question of what time is it in the world is that it's time to be true to ourselves, true to myself. And I've always been opposed to violence as a solution to things. That was when I was a teenager and we were in the midst of the Vietnam War, an important part of my church was active in opposing the war, and it was in with that perspective was instilled in me from my teenage years in my church and on from there through my college experiences and so on, and through life. And I grew up in a household that was pretty strong about no violence, from my parents and from my grandparents. And so it's been a part of me. And there are other elements of being true to myself, but this invitation to go to war, I mean, it's like a violation of who I am, and yet it's so tempting in this moment. And the other sort of piece of that is that this challenge to my identity, then, to who I am. And when someone says I'm sort of violent radical leftist, I want to respond to that because that's not my identity. I am progressive. I care about justice, and I care about compassion and the things that we can all talk about and share. And so, there is this moment of holding of staying true to who I am, that there's this time in the world to stay true to who I am. Yeah, I'm done.
I love that framing of challenge to identity. around violent radical leftist and language that is designed to really evoke a response, essentially. So I find that interesting. And you know, I think Janet said, like, we don't have the tools or we don't know what to do. We actually do have the tools. And, you know, some people have tools on a grander scale than what we do. They have a bigger platform, or they have like legal backgrounds. We know that there's a ton of challenges happening right now in the courts to the things that are happening, challenges in a good way. So different people have different platforms. And I think I go back to what you said, Tennyson, about what's good in life affirming, and the inherent trust in the small things. And we forget, and partly we forget because it's a little bit programmed out of us, but any one individual who does healing for themselves does healing on behalf of the collective. And I'm not going to change the mind of someone who has a strong attachment to a different worldview perspective than I have. But, you know, when they talk about the tipping point, you don't need, I forget what the percentage is, but you don't need a huge percentage to tip over into a different state or to state of being, or to have people. It's like, Jerry, when you talk about the campaign for gay marriage, like that, it went along for so long and then it tipped right over, and it only took, I don't know, 20% of the population or something like that. So I think we need to remember, I need to remember that I am not powerless in this. And maybe I don't have a big platform, and maybe I don't have a political stage or a legal background or whatever. But if I keep doing my work and I keep hanging out in circles like this, and keep infusing my own energetic field with reminders that I have choice about whether or not I let my neck snap back and forth, or head snap, whatever that is. I have choice about what threads I follow. I have choice about where to put my attention all the time, every day, every minute. I can lose those threads. My attention can be drawn into the shit show that's happening out there. But I don't have to stay there. And then I just remind myself, okay, enough of this, move into the next thing. And that's all right. So that's kind of where I land in the chaos of the moment and what time is it in the world. I'm going to keep aligning my attention with people who are reminding us that we have choice, and that there is light that is equal to or more than the darkness that's happening in the world right now.
That's good.
All right. Any final thoughts about these particular shades of life and what time it is in the world right now?
I just want to add one thing here.
Yeah.
And then which is when people say, you know, we need to go to war, that's a language of violence.
Mhm.
And so, you know, it's like, how can we express what needs to be done without a language of violence, or express where we want to be and what we want to do, and what our hopes are or our beliefs are without that language of violence. Yeah, that's it.
I'll check out with a tag onto that then, Jerry, because one of the things, it's a bit of the poet in me, it's a bit of the wordsmith. It's a bit of the rebel in me also. Oops, got an echo now. So I find myself using phrases like, well, if fierceness is what is required, then I'm going to be fierce about kindness. If warriorship is needed, then I'm going to be a warrior for intuition. So I find myself playing with those things, trying to bridge. Second thing for me is I feel stirred by our call. And I've said it before, I think we all do in some way. It matters that we have some context where we are stirred. We don't have conclusions. We just have some showing up for it. I feel that. I really appreciate the call to stay true to who I am. And I realize that even a potent statement like that and value can really be misconstrued and taken to some, extremes. But I'm going to count on something important there. Maybe just leave it there. And I think it was in your words, Kathy, just circles like this matter. And even when it's like, whoa, geez, I don't know where to go, or clunky, like, holy shit, we ought to be taking on these kind of reconfigurations. I feel glad to be circled up. Thank you for today. And thanks for starting us off, Janet.
If I may, I would like to thank you for allowing me to stir the pot. And to reflect that we're already at war. We don't need to go there. It has started. But we need to remember that we're not powerless. So in the collective, I heard this enormous wisdom come out from very different perspectives and locations. And that's why I show up. So thank you.
I like the emphasis again on we are not powerless. And one thing that I think is happening is that a new world order is emerging. And we may or may not like how that lines up. But I know as a Canadian, the alliances that are being created now are a demonstration of we are not powerless and we have allies. And we can turn to our allies and create a new sense of connection and being, and like I said, new world order. I think it's good to stir the pot every now and then. It's definitely good to be gathering and in some conversations that don't get stuck. We could have went down some rabbit holes in this conversation today, and we deliberately chose to mention some things, but not go down those rabbit holes. And for me, that's part of how I also protect my energy and my resources within. I'm going to go down the rabbit holes that energize me and strengthen me and remind me of joy and choice in the world.
Peace and love.